All right, guys, welcome, welcome. Hope everyone is good today. I'm so excited to have my friend Steve Wright here with me today to talk all about gut health and sleep. We have done quite a few other videos, and I made sure to link the playlist in the show notes for you guys so you can go back and watch all the other topics we've talked about. But I realize we've never talked about sleep. So, Steve, thank you so much for being here.
Thanks, Sarah. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, and just briefly, if anyone's like never watched a live stream with you before, can you just kind of give a little background?
Yeah, sure. Like most people who get into this, I had a bunch of my own problems, starting from birth and through, not having the greatest of genetics, plus growing up in the antibiotic era and plenty of beer and pizza. I've had digestive issues basically my whole life, and it kind of culminated in after college. I was having bloating so bad I would cry after every meal, no matter what I ate.
Mm,
And that was alternating, constipation, diarrhea that would follow that. But that was not the issue. The bloating and the inability to really like just hang out with people and be present was really the big issue. And then, as we all know, gut is sort of like the center of the body and it spreads out. So I was still dealing with cystic acne. I was overweight. I was having panic attacks and depression and just all kinds of things. And so changing my diet really helped a lot. Like 50% of my pain went away in a week. And that hooked me. And I was like, holy cow, I can take responsibility for my health. I can use my engineering background to understand this complex body that doctors don't seem to be able to help me with, and I can make progress. And so I immediately just started testing supplements and trying to find people who seem to have had problems like me, and
mm.
then paying them money or working for them for free until I could learn, how they did and how they got better. And so that led me into integrative and functional medicine. And then I ended up training with the Kalish Institute in functional medicine. And I saw like about 300 to 350 people for a while as a consultant, and then backed off of that. And I've been writing and creating supplements, and then starting Healthy Gut and sort of formulating our own supplements in an effort to build the company that I always wanted when I was struggling back in the day. And quite frankly, the products I use every day to feel good.
Yeah, and I remember I saw you, it was a little bit over a year ago, the first time that we actually talked and did a podcast together, but I just remember hearing your story and really relating to it, and that's really why I did the carnivore diet, because my digestive issues were taking over my whole life, and I know that there are so many people out there like that are just really still struggling with the gut issues, and even going carnivore, a lot of that was like, whew, so much better. But when I actually started understanding the gut a little bit better and learning from you, I was able to take my gut up to another notch now, and things are just amazing, like so much better than they've been my entire life. And I'm almost 43. So it's like, you don't have to be, in your 20s, I think, to fix these issues, but it does take some dedication and just understanding how things work. So that's why I love these conversations with you, and just really appreciate the friendship and just this relationship we've built over the last year. It's really cool.
Yeah, I've loved it as well. I'm sorry it's early here in Arizona, and I'm still trying to get my caffeine on board here to get going. But yeah, it's digestion and health. I think when I was younger, I was really focused on like how can I get back what I appeared to have lost? Like how can
Hmm.
I become the best version of myself and not rely on any pills, on any supplements, on any specific diets, because what if the end of the world or zombies or whatever? um, I want to be prepared. And then as I've aged and gotten into my late 30s, I've started to realize that like, oh, health literally does change decade to decade.
Yeah.
And if you do address your underlying issues and you do become the strongest version of you in the current now in the current decade, you will set yourself up for the best heal or the best aging and the best health in the coming years. If you don't address the stuff now, it will just keep magnifying each decade. But beyond that, as we go through life, whether it's kids or
Hmm.
housing or the world, like there's things that are going to impact our digestion as we age, and
Yeah.
that's when understanding how your body works, how like what tools you can have in your toolbox to reach into to pull out when you are having sleep issues, or suddenly life gets really hectic and you're really bloated or not going to the bathroom or
Mhm.
going to the bathroom too much. I think that's really what I think both of us want to share with people is like, hey, you can have your own toolbox, just like maybe you or somebody in your house has like a whole garage full of tools. You can have a cupboard and a knowledge base to literally go in there and help parts of your body that might be suffering.
Agreed, agreed. And we've got, like I said, just so many different topics that we've covered in this, in the gut healing space. But definitely with, when we talk about sleep, like I've heard that the reason for poor sleep in relation to the gut is really like gut dysbiosis or microbiome issues. And I definitely want to dive into that in this conversation. But, what is the role that like low stomach acid or poor enzymatic function can play in poor sleep?
Well, it's again the core of your body. And so if you are malabsorbing your food
Mhm.
or you're having like you're going to bed with upset tummy, upset heartburn, something like that, whatever, bloating, I mean, just winding down from the day, that's going to be really hard to fall asleep. So, our sleep hygiene starts way before it's time for bed, with how much sunlight we get, but also just what we ate that day and how we digested it. And so uh if you have low stomach acid, the chances that you're going to be fighting your digestion all night are much greater. And then you're probably going to be losing out on minerals or amino acids that would really be helpful for you to restore, say, your muscles if you exercise that day or the food that you're eating. And same thing with enzymes. At nighttime, it's one of the only times that we really fast. It's like a big time of
Mhm.
autophagy and renewal, and we need those enzymes during that time frame to sort of break up and get rid of whatever's left over from the day. So it is a time of renewal, not only for the brain and for our energy, but also for the gut and for what's left over. And so we can increase that renewal and support that renewal by taking products before bed that will sort of elevate that. But I think it's you can't separate sleep issues or hormone issues from the gut. You can't separate brain issues or skin issues from the gut. They're all connected. It's just sort of second and third order consequences usually.
Yeah, and I think a lot of people that are watching my channel or listening, they really eat a lot more meat. They eat a lot more animal products, which I think are wonderful bioavailable forms, the best way you can really get a lot of nutrients. But, and we've talked about this in a lot of other podcasts, if someone has low stomach acid and low enzymatic function, chances are that they are going to have a much harder time sleeping because their body is just really not breaking down that food, because it is harder to break down, contrary to what a lot of people say. If you don't have the necessary things in place, it is harder for people to digest those foods. So yeah, people on a meat-based diet may want to pay a little bit more attention to this, especially if they're having trouble sleeping, to look, maybe you have low stomach acid, maybe your enzymatic function's not functioning optimally. And if you've eaten a plant-based diet or a low meat diet for a long time, those are more likely to be impaired, right?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, your even what you did that day could be impaired. So
Mm,
like your stress level, where if you're a woman or you identify as having a cycle, I mean, I guess that's a woman parts, but
yeah.
if you have a cycle, like even where your hormones are at that week, it's going to change your stomach acid, your enzyme function, as well as your sleep. And so it's not like you can just take enzymes or HCl like before bed
Mhm.
and immediately get better sleep if it's been one of those hard days or hard weeks. It's more of like, and we haven't even gotten into this, but I have had a real battle with sleep almost my entire life.
Mm. Yeah, me too.
So this is not coming from somebody who had like, if you tell me there's a product for sleep, I buy it. I've probably already bought it. If because I do suffer with inability to shut my mind down, fall
Mhm.
asleep. I've suffered through phases of insomnia where I can't get back to sleep. So you want to talk about all kinds of weird stuff, from drinking honey before bed to shots of almond butter to whatever, to try to work on insulin levels or melatonin levels
Yeah.
or rhythms. Like, all that stuff is cool. But what I've found is that that's when you're sort of layering on band-aids into a broken foundation. And so the healthier you can get from a core level, then the easier it is to handle your sleep issues, whether it is the racing mind or the insomnia or the inability to get a certain stage of sleep. All of these things we can dive into, and I've battled and worked really hard to gain back. But without a doubt, the stronger your gut is, the more probably the higher HRV is going to be, and the
Yep.
better you're going to rest and renew. So I think that should be the conversation, rather than focusing on like, oh my gosh, don't get a little peak of light that somehow came from, like I ran around in like duct tape.
Your brain is smarter than that. I mean, if you get a
Totally.
little, I do yell at my husband though if he has the phone in the bed. I'm like, you're messing with my circadian rhythm. Get that thing out of the bedroom right now because I've
And
got my
and
blue
that's
blockers
fair.
on. I'm like, get it out. but
Right. Right.
But if
That's
the light
fair.
gets turned on, your brain, the SCN is not stupid. Your suprachiasmatic nucleus is not stupid. It can adjust and say, oh, that was a little, it's like a flash of lightning outside. Our ancestors had that when they had to sleep outdoors. So your brain's not dumb,
Right. And we have a full moon on Friday. Like,
right?
I mean, if you go out on Friday, it's not that dark out, honestly. It's not the blackout version of supercharged health we're trying to create now. So the idea that our brain and our sleep cycles have to be like, oh no, I got a flash of light, or oh no, the dog did something, and like now I'm screwed for the rest of the night. That's just a construct that I hope that you can let go of, because our ancestors had shooting stars. They had different light cycles based on the moon, fire and predators. So the idea that the brain can't still rest and find sleep in despite like upsets is, I think, kind of crazy. But to get there, to get that flexibility and that
Yeah.
resilience, that starts during the day.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And for me, I'm like you. I had the worst time sleeping. Even as a kid, my grandmother would tell my mom that I was going to wear holes in the bed. Like because I would just toss and turn all night. And she's like, this child is going to wear holes into the sheets. Like, what in the heck is wrong with her? And I just remember, I was on sleeping pills forever. And then I wanted to come off them in my mid 30s, and I did. But part of that was I really had to change my diet, and doing carnivore was actually really helpful in helping me sleep. But something happened about a year into carnivore where all of a sudden I started having sleep issues again. And like I said, it was right about that time that I met you and started with the healthy gut products and realized like I've been doing carnivore this whole time, and I haven't been, absorbing my food as well. I think I've had low stomach. I know I've had low stomach acid, low enzymatic function. And when I added those things in, my sleep was able to repair again. And so, I think a lot of people, and some of the symptoms of that, and we can definitely talk about that for people watching. For me, if I didn't eat my last meal by like 2 o'clock, 4 o'clock, it had to be early in the day, then my sleep was going to be trashed. And that was like, well, it wasn't like this before when I was eating tons of carbs, but when I started to up my protein, and there were so many amazing benefits for me doing that. I mean, so many amazing benefits. I noticed that I had to eat that meal really early, or else my Aura Ring data would say my HRV was really low. My body temperature wouldn't drop until really late, and all of those signs. I'm like, that's really weird,
And do you attribute that to cortisol or insulin, or like what did you attribute that to?
I just really didn't know at the time. And I had heard a lot of other people doing carnivore say the same thing and say, well, time restricted feeding is good for you. And that's kind of what you should aim for anyway. But I never thought about the fact that my body was still breaking down that food. And if your body is still breaking down food, you're still making cortisol, because you need that in order to break down the food. And cortisol opposes melatonin. And so that's something that a lot of people don't understand. Those issues can create the cortisol as well, right?
Yeah, cortisol. Everyone's really, focused. Well, not these days, but like a few years ago, everyone was like, "Oh,
Hi.
cortisol is the enemy, and
Right.
kill all
It's
your
not.
cortisol." It's
Yeah.
not.
No.
Like you said, you want the right rhythm. You want to finish your digestion, hopefully before bed, such that cortisol also opposes insulin, and
Yes.
so you if you have poor cortisol control, which I think it's fair to wager that if you go carnivore, you might be suffering with cortisol related issues on top of insulin related issues. They're kind of like two peas in the pod.
Mhm.
I think that, moving around the timing of your meals can be as important as what you eat in those meals.
Oh,
And
yeah.
so doing like what you said, where you're like, okay, digestion's going to be complete. Like there's no more things happening. I mean, the other thing is like how long, like the normal meal should stay in the stomach between like 2 to 4 hours. And if you have low stomach
Right.
acid, that's just going to keep getting extended. That's what the studies show. And
Yep.
so that's going to mess up your actual uptake of nutrients, including carbohydrates, if there's carbohydrates, but if there's not, then just amino acids and fats from your animal products. But even amino acids still spike insulin. Like it's not
Mm.
that it's just carbohydrates. It's, any sort of nutrient uptake. The body's like, hey, this is feeding. This is anabolic time. This is like, get out the growth hormone and the insulin. Like, let's put this stuff to use. And so if you can shift those spikes, or if you can do it properly in the stomach, such that you're not, trying to wind down at 9:30 and suddenly all your nutrients are dumping into your small intestine and then getting uptaked into the body, you probably are going to feel better. Oops. Did I lose you? Hey, everybody. I don't know if I don't know if you can hear me. Can you throw in the comments if you can hear me? Or I'm not sure if it was me or Sarah that has dropped off here. So I'm gonna check out the comments here. But if anybody's listening right now, I'm wondering if we are still live, because it says we're live, but I don't see Sarah at the moment. So hopefully we can get through this little technical detail here. Okay, so we can hear you. All right. So Sarah's the one that's frozen. Sorry to hear about that. I'm sure she'll be back. Thank you, Debbie. Thank you, Kelly, and Oregon, Freebird, Cherry. Appreciate that. Yeah, I'm just I'll just hang out with you guys for a little bit, because I kind of lost my train of thought there, wondering if I was the frozen one. But yeah, full moons are really hard to sleep. I will typically take extra precautions come full moon time on Friday. And part of that could be nutrient timing. Part of that's probably going to be extra digestive support. But the moons do regulate us more than I think we want. So if you guys have any questions, go ahead and throw them in the chat. Otherwise, I can just ramble. But I'm assuming you guys all came here to hear something
Sorry.
specific. Oh, you're back. All right.
This is a brand new computer, and it just totally like died. I don't know what's going on, so hopefully it doesn't do that again. I'm so sorry.
It's
Okay.
all right. I was trying to hang out with everybody in the chat, so I asked them for ideas to talk about.
I'm sorry. I don't know why. I might have to send this thing back, because I just bought it and I'll be in the middle of working and then it just like blanks out, which is not ideal. So
That is not what they're supposed to do.
no, it's really not a brand new laptop. So thank you guys for being patient. So what were we just talking about? I know we were talking about cortisol and yeah.
I think you were speaking about how switching to eating your carnivore meal at like 2 p.m. rather than maybe at
Yes.
dinner time really helped you after 6 months. And then, yeah, I think we were just talking about how there's a large interplay between when the stomach dumps into the small intestine for insulin and cortisol. But I feel like we kind of did that a good justice, and we could
Yep.
probably move on or grab some of the comments at this point.
Yeah. Let's see. The only comments I'm seeing is Sarah is frozen. Someone did want to know about your products if somebody has an ulcer. That's an interesting question.
So Tributyrin X is a great product for people who have ulcers. It's not going to directly impact it. It's not an ulcer treatment or anything like that. But if you think about, again, in health, it's really like the mind, not the body, but the mind really wants to say like X equals Y. And if I can
Mhm.
just change X, I will change Y. But ulcers are like most things in the body. And there's it's a complex system. And so if we try to just address it, it's unlikely we can fix it. So it's better to think about what causes, like what are the underlying causes of it. So in the case of an ulcer, one of the underlying causes is your mucous membranes have been depleted. And now you're having tissue that's exposed. It's extremely painful. And so there's certain products like DGL, which is used in Asia for ulcers. So you can look in high dose DGL for that. But then the question is like, how do we keep them from coming back? Why did the mucous membranes break down in the first place? And so Tributyrin X, at least in the small intestine and large intestine, and we believe it might do this systemically, it helps rebuild those mucus thickness and help express more mucus. So Tributyrin X could help out with that. And hopefully it's also anti-inflammatory systemically, but you're not going to do HCl guard. You're not going to do HCl from anybody at this point until you get that ulcer figured out. Enzymes can be hit or miss with people with ulcers. One common thing to do when you have an ulcer is use some sort of acid blocking supplement. But as you do that, the studies show that you're going to basically reduce your uptake of most of your vitamins and minerals. So you could take enzymes with it unless it aggravates it. So a lot of people will take Holozymes with a acid suppressing option to hopefully try to recover as many of those nutrients as they can while they're healing. But for some folks, it still causes some sort of like pain or upset. And so if that's the case for you, then do not use the product and just hit us up and get your money back.
Yeah, that's the one thing I really appreciate is that you guys do give your money back. And I have never worked with another company that does that for people. Because there's, like I said, 9 out of 10 people that I recommend these to. They really, really do help. But there's that one person who maybe it's not exactly the issue that they need to be working on with their gut right now. And so that you guys do offer that. And so I really appreciate that about what you do for sure. Oh no. Are we still here?
Yeah, we're still here.
Okay, good. I was like, oh shit, it froze again. No, if I freeze, I'll come back on my old laptop. I still have it under my desk, but
okay.
Hopefully that won't happen. So I guess just kind of jumping back a little bit to the whole cortisol issue. One thing I wanted to talk about, if people have these issues with digestion, the low stomach acid, low enzymatic function, they're eating kind of more of a meat-based diet. I think a lot of times these diets do get blamed for people having high cortisol. And just from what I have seen is that a lot of times I think that's happening because there's poor mineral absorption. And also this issue of, you're not able to really digest your food as well. And that can be causing the cortisol as well. Do you think that can also play into the sleep issue as well as just the poor mineral absorption? And again, that digestion piece?
Yeah, again, I mean, there's so many layers to digestion as there are to sleep. So when we say someone has bad sleep or poor sleep, I can't even begin to address that question without asking them like 10 more questions about it. Okay, is it when you start or is it when you wake up, you don't feel good? Do you track it? What are your sleep cycles? So, but to your point, again, sleep, it's best to think of sleep as an emergent property of your body and of your day and your routine. So in other words, if you're just trying to take a product to better your sleep, that is not bad, but it is a bit of a Band-Aid that is going to probably fail you at some point. Like it might work for a couple months and then your body will adjust to it and then it won't work as well. If you're malabsorbing your minerals, especially, like minerals like magnesium that do tend to help us relax, then yes, over time you could spike that up. Also, I think we fail to take into account our body's desires. We're like, hey, I want to do carnivore or I want to go XYZ, but it's not like we have a whole conversation with the rest of us.
Yes. Exactly.
And so when you switch to carnivore, I know there's some people, Mary is saying that she's having bathroom issues for the first 2 weeks. It's not like Mary had an option. It's not like any of us can really have a dialogue with our body and say like, okay, we're about to make a really big switch here. This might be a little stressful on you because
Right.
we're going to totally change how much lipase and protease we need. We're going to need like triple the amount of stomach acid production that you've been doing for the last couple of years. Like, I need you to power up your ability to handle all this animal product. It's not like that happens. And so the
Right.
body, I think, for the first few weeks can go through a stress response.
Yeah,
It is a
definitely.
bit of a stress response. And so, taking that into account when you make the switch, by doing maybe extra stuff to help reduce that with Epsom salt baths or extra meditation or, earthing or grounding
Don't go to
before bed.
CrossFit every morning at 5 a.m.
Right, right. Don't,
At least
yeah,
for the first month. Then you want to go back to it later, do it. But yeah, it's an extra stressor, right?
totally,
Yeah.
totally. And so, um, your body's changing what minerals and vitamins are available to it on a daily basis. It's changing frankly, the inflammatory agents. It's not that, like, I mean, I'm sure even at the best like sourced meat and seafood, there can still be extra stuff in there that we have to detoxify out. So it's not like you've just eliminated all the bad things. It's like your body's still going to find things that it has to get rid of and detoxify. So, and it also, I know a lot of people experience like almost this own internal detoxification where they're sort of their microbiome shedding because it's
Mhm.
lost its inputs. Maybe it's able to finally dump some extra, toxins that are inside of it that it hasn't been able to dump. So this is all stressful. So like you said, layering in like, oh, I'm going to become a marathoner or a
Right.
CrossFitter, or I'm going to go to BJJ like 7 days a week. Like, that is not the right time. Like, give your body support in the change. And then as you sort of build back up, add maybe some other exercise stressors or, ice baths or whatever it might be.
Yeah, I mean, I when I first started carnivore, I wish I had given my digestive system some support, some HCl before my meals, and at least the enzymes midway through because I struggled that first month with a lot of loose stools. So some people have a lot of constipation, some people have a lot more loose stools, and for me it was like the loose stools were really annoying. They finally did go away after about a month, 6 weeks or so, but was not really fun. But so many of my other issues were just, like taken care of. And I was feeling so much better that and I had read that, well, this can happen in the very beginning. So I kind of just muscled through it. But I wish I had been able to just support my digestive system a little bit better in that time. And it probably wouldn't have been as bad.
Yeah, I mean, I think some people have this misconception that like loose stools or diarrhea is like, oh, well, now I feel slim or, maybe I'm losing extra weight. And
No.
that is like not, I mean, the fattest or the flattest, I'm sorry, that's like the opposite, but the flattest stomach and the best you can feel is actually when you have like a great number 4 on the Bristol stool chart every day.
Yep. Yep.
And you're, maybe going like once or twice per day. Um, you will actually be healing your body because you'll be absorbing the nutrients instead of it just running through you. And so if you do have weight loss goals or you have other health goals, you really want the nutrients out of all that amazing meat. You don't want to be eating $20 ribeyes or, I don't know, with inflation, $30 ribeyes and just
Yeah.
putting them in the toilet. Like, that
Right.
is not a sustainable way to lose weight, and your body will start to hoard its own minerals and amino acids and fats because it's not coming in. So you'll end up working counter to what you're trying to do.
Right. And that's in turn going to affect your sleep. It's going to affect your mineral levels. It's going to affect all of those things. And then you're going to not be optimized. You're not going to feel your best. And you may get some benefits, but you're not going to be getting all the benefits that you could be getting for sure. Yeah. Cool. Well, I wanted to jump a little bit about, I know we've talked about this in another live stream, but kind of the gut hormone connection, especially for, women in perimenopause and menopause. But can we kind of dive into how sleep comes into this like gut hormone, that whole loop? How does that all work?
Yeah, I mean, that's a big question. And it's, well, number one, it's all connected. Like, for instance, a lot of people are focused on immunity right now, and
Hmm.
I think the best way, I mean, I did a lot of deep dives into immunity over the last like 5-10 years, and the one takeaway I think I got from all of my efforts into immunity was that the hormones sort of are the hand of the marionette. And if your
Mm.
hormones are jacked up, it's pretty impossible to have great immune system. And
Yeah.
on the converse side is sort of the gut. The gut is sort of coming up from the bottom. The hormones are in the top, and then the rest of your body's through the middle. Like everything you want. You want good brain function. You want good skin. You want good immunity. You want good sleep. That's all kind of in the middle, and it's sort of like a sandwich. A bit of a meat sandwich there between the gut and the hormones. If either one of those is off, then just good luck. You'll always be chasing your tail. And
Yeah.
so, how does that, the circle sort of complete itself? Well, the hormones are like kind of like spent, if that makes sense. I don't think
Hmm.
people often realize that, but hormones are sort of spent and used, and then they have to be detoxified and eliminated.
Yeah.
And again, most people don't really think about this for detoxification, but how do we get rid of stuff? We poop, pee, and sweat. If you're
Right.
not doing, I saw someone say they're not pooping they're pooping like every 4 or 5 days or something like that. That means you're holding on to toxins. Like every
Yep.
day you want to poop, pee, and sweat. If you
Yep.
don't do those things, your detoxification systems, like literally your kidneys and your liver, like we don't need to talk about glutathione or anything special. Like if you're not doing the waste removal part of it, it's just
Right.
backing up inside of you.
Right.
And
And even
so,
carnivore, because people will say, "Oh, you only need to poop every 4 days," and I'm like, "No, no.
no,
I go every day. Don't eat fiber. Like you should probably be going at least once a day, typically in the morning around sunrise. That's normal. And if you're not, right, you're not detoxifying your hormones, correct?
correct. Yeah, there's this thing called hepatic recirculation, and I thought this was kind of honestly, I thought it was kind of bullcrap. And so I have a strong BS meter, and I'm like, man, there's some experts and some woo woo people saying like, oh yeah, if you don't go, you'll actually recirculate your toxins. And so I actually went and bought some medical books because I kept trying to find like, is this true?
There's so
And what
much
is the actual
crap out there.
mechanism?
Yeah.
There's
Yeah.
just so much junk that I
Yeah.
had to get to the bottom of it. And it's actually true. It's called hepatic recirculation. And it's essentially about the fact that your colon, your large intestine, is sort of always just trying to extract water and minerals and any sort of nutrients out of what's inside of it. And it turns out just due to charges and cellular diffusion, if you have those basically those not detox, but like those spent hormones. I like to think of them as like spent as in like almost like the fumes that are coming out of your car. You want that leaving your body, but if not, then it'll suck those metabolites back up into your body, back into the portal vein, and start to recirculate them into the body. And so you can end up with extra estrogens, especially that
That's
you really
estrogen
don't
dominance
want.
is such a problem. Yeah.
Yeah. And so um like how does the gut play into this? Well, number one, the gut is responsible for getting rid of these spent, testosterones, estrogens, progesterones, whatever. Number two, people really failed to comprehend how important the microbiome is, and how important the interplay around your gut and your immune system is to the hormone network. So I don't think most people realize that like the gut converts, I think 30 to 35% of all of your T3 for you. So your thyroid makes
Yep.
T4. And then that's the inactive version of thyroid hormone. If you want the active version, T3, that's the one that makes you feel good. That's the one that, when people feel really sluggish, the doctor will typically prescribe T3 to begin with. If you want more of that, one of the places to focus is your gut, because 30 to 35% of your conversion happens there. And if your gut and your gut cells are inflamed, if they're not able to perform their jobs, you're not going to have that, and you're going to feel kind of sluggish. You might have the symptoms of hypothyroidism but not show it on various
Hmm.
tests. And the same thing is being found to be true from an estrogen, progesterone, testosterone, growth hormone standpoint. Whether you're someone who's trying to like bulk up or like build muscle, whether you're someone who's just trying to age gracefully and look great, your gut and the microbiome and the interplay between all those cells is really important for signaling how much, like what state are we in. That's the other thing. The body is very state dependent. Just to illustrate this, one of the reasons why your grandma or your mom might have said, don't swim after your meal, is because when you eat, all your blood and all the focus goes right into the center of your body. And so you don't have any blood flow to your capillaries to go swimming. And if you go swimming, you activate the sympathetic nervous system and you shunt the blood away from your digestive tract that was needed to power digestion. And now you're going to end up with an upset tummy. So that's just a version of like, are we in like okay, or are we in fight or flight? So the same thing is true. If all day long you're experiencing inflammation, leaky gut, dysregulated microbiome, things like that, some sort of parasite, your body's never feeling okay. Like, oh, it's time to make babies. Let's turn on the estrogen factory or the testosterone factory. It's not. Right. It's like we're under stress. We are in fight or flight, and it's not safe to basically use our pile of nutrients and use them for like just feeling good.
Right. Yeah. And if someone in the chat's asking if they do have estrogen dominance, if they know that that's an issue for them, how could fixing digestion help that? And I know my answer is going to be make sure what do you poop, pee, and sweat every day, right? That's the basics, correct?
Yeah. Step one is poop, pee, and sweat. And so, whatever you have to do those things. If you're a sauna person, sauna. If you're an exercise person, exercise. Most people pee, but the point there is drink more water, at least have a sufficient water intake. But the pooping thing, like do what you got to do, whether you have to use like a magnesium glycinate, to get your bowels moving. If that doesn't work, you might need a more aggressive magnesium, like a magnesium oxide or something.
Yeah, those
citrate.
Are rough. Yeah.
But those can be very aggressive and not for everybody. Or focus on the sort of the signals that tell your body to poop, which is like low stomach acid and HCl. So, that's step one. Step two is probably just getting a blood panel, because I actually don't agree that everyone has high estrogen. I think a lot of people have low progesterone and they blame estrogen, but estrogen's just trying to do whatever it can to keep you alive. When the issue is actually progesterone. So don't, especially for women, do not just guess about your hormone patterns.
Yeah, don't self-diagnose.
Yeah, a woman's body is amazing. It is so complex. It's an orchestra. A man's body is really simple comparatively. And so with men, we can guess with symptoms and a few labs much more easily and much more reliably. But with women, I've seen like 100 to 200 different panels in a row, like back to back to back. And oftentimes I could get good at guessing, but there would still be a few outliers where I was just like, whoa, what? You have no cortisol? And like, oh, that's actually driving the adrenal issues, actually driving a sex hormone problem. And if we, focus on that, then the hormones start to correct themselves. So, when it comes to women, please get the blood work, save up your money, or just spend the money to get it done. Because otherwise we can focus on the basics, which is gut health and microbiome health and just, doing all the things that Sarah talks about, from de-stressing to staying in the correct circadian rhythm. But until you get some of those raw numbers, it's really hard to figure that out.
Definitely. And, so there's a couple questions in the chat. One question, because we talked a little bit about the loose stools, just with constipation. Do you think adding HCl, do you think constipation could be a result of low stomach acid, low enzymatic function as well? Yeah.
I've seen it thousands of times that constipation is low stomach acid. The issue, again, there's so many layers, right? We want it to be easy, but it's not easy when it comes to hormones or gut health. But one thing you can think of when it comes to your stomach is it's sort of the timer on the rest of your digestion. So if your timer is sped up, which could actually be low acid, you will have diarrhea. If your timer slowed down due to low acid, you'll have constipation. The funny thing is that you can re-regulate your timer with a betaine HCl supplement, whether it's ours or somebody else's. And for people who have loose stools, they will have less of them. And people who are constipated, having hard stools, will have less of those. And it's all just based on this one idea that the pH from your stomach dropping into your small intestine is probably the number one variable about what's going to happen from there on out.
Yeah. Okay, that makes perfect sense. So it really will fix either way because I feel like
Yeah, it's
people tend towards one way or the other for sure when they try to go on a more meat-based diet for sure.
yeah, it's adaptogenic. And
Yeah.
so even if you're someone who's I was an alternating IBS person, and it helped me regulate. It'll take the swings down and make your range of possibilities much more reliable.
Yeah. And before I jump into the next question, just something we've talked about this in a ton of podcasts, but just as you get older, so if you're having hormone issues, it typically happens after we're 35, younger and younger these days now, though, unfortunately, with so many women with PCOS. But young women, as we get older, though, that stomach acid, we make less and less of it just after the age of 35. This is just something that we have to mention in every episode because I think people just forget, this is just a product of aging, unfortunately.
Yeah, yeah, and actually some new data just came out about that like 2 years ago because there was a couple studies done in the 50s and then one in the 70s that said basically as you age, you lose stomach acid production,
Mhm.
and it kind of became one of these old wives' tales. I repeated it. I wasn't really sure. The data was a little suspect, but some researchers over in California just kind of took up stomach acid as a source of study, and I was like so excited. But basically, what they showed is that as we age, our ability to produce acid for food, like in response to food, declines and can actually like double or triple over time. And
Mhm.
so, again, if we think about the timer from the moment you start eating to like when it goes in the toilet, there's each section is supposed to have a chunk of time basically for a healthy transit time and healthy absorption, all that stuff. And having low stomach acid, basically, the data suggests either you lose your ability to stay acidified or you lose your ability to create acid in response to food over time. And not something that anybody wants to talk about, just kind of like we've talked about a few times, Sarah, about like the ovaries just kind of shutting down. But it's true. Ovaries and testes are given out, and so is your stomach over time. And so if you
Yep.
look at it from an anti-aging tool, I know even in Suzanne Summers, who's like, one of the queens of anti-aging,
Yeah.
and she's been talking about some stuff that's been right for like 30 or 40 years. In her latest book, she talks about betaine HCl and stomach acid production, for hair, skin, and nails, and
Yep.
for hormone.
Yeah, that's why we did the whole live stream last month, just completely about hair loss because that's such a huge issue. And if you're losing hair, that's one of the first places you should look is your stomach acid production for sure. Yep. Well, one question, I guess it was in relation to something you said earlier. Grace, if you're still here, hello. She says, I know a post meal walk is beneficial, but she doesn't want to make sure but she wants to make sure she's still in a parasympathetic state. How long should she wait after she eats to go for a walk?
Well, Grace, and for everybody, it's more about the state of your being than it is the walk as the issue. So, like, if you sit down for a very delicious, ribeye that cost you $40, but you're super rushed because the kids were super stressful, or the dog, or this or that, or work, then your ability to digest and break that food down is going to diminish. And the same thing's true. If the walk after your meal is like an athletic event, or if you're just going to
Hmm.
go out there and walk the dogs and the dogs don't walk well and they're going to attack the neighbors, then yeah, it's going to be stressful and maybe not the best thing for you. But if you're able to go for a saunter or
Yeah.
a meander and just look around, try to smell a flower, like, I mean, it's really stupid and silly, but literally I have a rule where I try to smell flowers. And right now I'm in Arizona, they don't really smell here, but it's a simple, again, grandma's advice that helps train the parasympathetic to remember that, like, hey, it's not about making a mile or getting my 10,000 steps after a meal. It's just about going out there, getting some sunlight, and walking around and seeing how present you can be.
Yeah, because I mean, I think it's different with telling a kid not to go swimming right after they eat, because that's going to be a lot more of a physical activity. Kids don't usually just have like a chill swim. They're jumping around playing. I think walking after a meal, if like Steve says, if you're doing it in a way where it's kind of a chill thing, I think it's really helpful because there are so many benefits to walking after meals. So I wouldn't stress too much about that one, right?
Correct. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Cool. Well, let's see. I wanted to get to a couple more of these questions I have. I know we've been on for a little while here, and I know there's some more questions in the chat, but how can histamine issues come into play with the gut and sleep and just seasonal allergies? Maybe next month, maybe we'll talk about seasonal allergies on our chat.
Yeah, yeah, that would probably be a great timing for it.
Yeah, in April.
Um,
Yep.
just because we don't have time to like really open the histamine bucket, if you will. It's
Yeah.
it's a
We did
deep
a chat on histamine, a full one, but yeah.
Yeah, yes, the answer is yes. Histamine can sort of like be triggered in the middle of the night. It can wake you up. It can make it hard for your nervous system to regulate. Like actually histamine is like I think it's best to think of histamine as an upper. It sort
Mhm.
of is a wake upper. Um, as evidenced by like if you have a histamine experience from food or pollen or something, you're sneezing a lot. Like it's an upper. And so if you're trying to wind down for bed and you're struggling, histamine can definitely be an issue. That's where Tributyrin X, I think, is. I
Mhm.
mean, number one, we didn't even talk about this yet, but Tributyrin X, there's studies on tributyrin, the same specific compound we use in mice and rats that show a increase in deep sleep states
Mm.
if taken. And we have seen in our customer base, like 10 to 20% of people actually use it before bed as a sleep aid, and they notice better scores on their Aura Ring or on their sleep tracker, whatever they use. And so beyond that, I think Tributyrin X is one of the best things to use if you have high histamine or you struggle with seasonal histamine related issues. It is number one, it helps actually turn off the histamine production from the mast cells. It sort of bathes the mast cell in sort of a more parasympathetic state, if you will, for the mast cell. Number two, it does that mucus thing where it increases the mucus production, which we actually want like a buffer between whatever's happening, whether it's pollen or food, and our cells, like our mast cells.
Mhm.
People are like, how did I get this beef allergy? Like they might do a Zoomer or some other gut test, and they're like, oh my gosh, I can't eat beef. And that's what I've been on carnivore. And it's a really complex problem until you think about it from this perspective, which is just that if your immune system and your histamine, your mast cells and your histamine release are just always being like given beef like right in their face, they're gonna overreact to it. And so if you can
Mhm.
put space between the reaction like it's supposed to be, then it won't cause as much of a reaction because it's just not being triggered as often by the same pollen or the same food. So histamine is definitely a a way to wake up in the middle of the night and not have a good
Yeah.
night's sleep. And again, whether you go down the histamine rabbit hole or not, it's a heck of a rabbit hole that you always end up
Mhm.
like, oh, I have to basically heal systemically, and the gut is where the majority of the mast cells are. So I got to heal my gut.
Yeah, I mean, that's what I tell people that have histamine issues because I posted about sardines yesterday and I woke up this morning to a slew of comments of like, I can't eat those. I have histamine issues. You're not supposed to have histamine issues forever. You can heal them. And that starts with healing the gut. I mean, that starts with having enough stomach acid, doing the things structurally that you need to heal your gut. Elimination diet, absolutely very, very helpful. But you don't necessarily have to stay on that forever if you do go through the process of healing your gut.
Right, right.
Yeah.
Again, all these dietary changes are really cool, but you're sort of removing the offending agents. And if you
Hmm.
assume that just when you bring those sort of quote unquote offending agents, which I don't believe that necessarily vegetables are bad, but when you bring those back in, if you can't tolerate those, that says more about your underlying bodily health than it does about the vegetables.
Yeah, it does. Definitely. Yeah, it's not a popular opinion in the in the carnivore community, and I used to feel that way as well, but if I want to have a little vegetable here and there, which is not a thing that I do often, but if I'm going out to a steakhouse, I might want to try whatever my husband orders. He likes to get side dishes, and I'm fine. It doesn't cause me to have histamine reactions. I'm not doubled over in pain. I don't have digestive issues. Now, do I eat like that most of the time? No. But if I want to, it's a matter of like having a choice, you know, and I think I don't want people to be in that place where they're just choiceless, you know, and I sleep just fine after I have those foods, because after I'd eat those foods, my sleep would always be totally wrecked. So just, yeah, I want to open people's minds about the fact that sometimes we have to do a little bit more than just the elimination diet to get to that place of gut healing, optimal sleep, all of those things, and hormones too. I want to talk to Shay at some point, your wife, about the hormone thing. We need to have our own separate chat for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, look, I had a very, very strict diet for a number of years, and that diet gave me relief and it gave me my life back. And so I don't take me the wrong way that I'm saying like, oh, if you're carnivore and you're feeling great, that something's wrong with you.
Right.
That is not what I'm saying. But what I am saying is exactly what Sarah just said, is where as I've integrated and evolved many perspectives over the last like 2 decades of health and wellness and athletic performance, I've realized that your life is going to change. Your availability of food will change, whether it's seasonality or where you move or war or whatever. And the like the reason why humans are still alive is our ability to adapt. And so we want optionality. The more options you have, the richer you are. Legitimately, whether you look at that from a resource standpoint or a money standpoint, you want optionality. And so if you have to be in a box, and that's that little box of how you eat is the only way you feel good, chill in that box for a little while, enjoy your life. But at some point, I hope you'll wake up from that box after you've normalized to it and go, man, you know what? I would love to dip my toe outside this box or expand the size of it. Like, you know, when it becomes Thanksgiving time or Christmas time, or even the ball games this summer or the beach, maybe I do want something that the rest of my family's eating. And so I hope that we inspire with these chats this idea that like it's okay if you want to be in the box and feel
Yeah.
great. And I hope to inspire you that you can make your box bigger. You can leave the box if you want, but the way to get there is typically not through diet. You've already done as much as you can do. You got to go to the root causes of why you needed this diet in the first place.
Exactly. That's what I had to get to with the diet. And, you know, yeah, like I said, I primarily just still eat carnivore because it's easier for me. But if I want to have something else, I can, and it doesn't ruin my life. So I think that's just an important message. And I did have one more question on the list about sleep, that we didn't talk about. I kind of mentioned it in the beginning, but how does the microbiome actually influence sleep? Because we've talked about kind of the structure. We talk about the house, right? The
Yeah.
structure of the house, the stomach acid, enzymatic function, you know, all those things, very important. But I feel like the microbiome is kind of like the people in the house, right?
Yeah. The answer is we don't know conclusively yet.
Mm,
Just like how if you listen to anyone's podcast or YouTube's and they're
hmm.
like, this is what a healthy microbiome is, they're
Right.
full of shit. They don't know that. That is not true. We do not know that at all at this point. So anybody saying that kind of language, I would run away from. And the same
Mm,
thing is true is like, how does the microbiome, like, how can we tweak it to get better sleep? We do not know that data yet, other than to say that we do from Chinese medicine. I think it's very viable to realize that if you wake up between like 2 and 4 in the morning, there's a parasite cycle. And
mm,
I'm not saying that's 100% true for you, but if you've never gotten a GI test done and you do wake up in the middle of the night and you're like have a few other risk factors for a parasite infection or a worm infection, I would say get that lab work done. That's worth $300 or $400 to rule that off your list. Again, with the microbiome, a diverse and healthy range of bacteria with strong butyrate production and short chain fatty acid production is the best we can come up with for what a healthy microbiome is. And so butyric acid we talked about is
hmm.
anti-inflammatory. It goes systemic. It helps with your lungs, with your brain, with your sleep cycles, with your bone loss, and even muscle growth. There's a whole little deep dive I've been on with some bodybuilders around muscle growth and muscle retention with butyric acid. And so that's supposed to come from your microbiome. You don't
Hmm.
necessarily need to take a supplement for it. it should be naturally created there. And if it's not, then those signaling molecules are not really going out to the rest of the body. And so you may struggle with deep sleep. So stage 4 sleep. I struggled with that for much of my life. And it wasn't until Tributyr Next where, and I've done, I've done like over 100 hours worth of neurofeedback and biofeedback and psychedelics and floats. I own my own float tank. Hyperbaric, somebody mentioned hyperbaric, ozone. I own all those machines. I don't run around
Wow.
with my shirt off like Ben Greenfield and like tout it all, but I have all those machines and I've tried all those things and they do work from time to time. But by far and away, I found that getting my butyrate production up mattered more for my deep sleep than almost anything, beyond basic sleep hygiene and actually a little bit of exercise. I find that like 20 to 30 minutes of cardio or just like movement really helps my sleep.
Yeah, and someone says, "What about the butyrate that butter contains?" We've talked about this before, but I
Yeah,
always like to
that's a
revisit this
total
one.
that's a total myth. People
Yeah.
out there that are talking about how you're getting butyrate from butter is just
You gotta
they
eat
don't
like a
understand.
pound of it, right?
Well, no, it's beyond that. Like, so butyric acid gets destroyed by the stomach.
Mm,
So, why the first generation of butyric acids bind it to salts to protect it? We use an enteric capsule to protect it from the stomach acid. But basically, there's like what, like, yeah, 1 to 3% in butter, and so you'd need to eat just truckloads of butter. Number one, if that actually worked. Number two,
mhm.
you'd have to protect it from the stomach and the stomach acid, which is highly unlikely. So yeah, butyrate from butter or ghee, just just stop it already. It's not true. It's not going to happen from a physiology standpoint. And even if it did, let's say I'm wrong and you're right, then what will happen is it will immediately get absorbed in your upper small intestine as soon as it gets dumped in there. And you want to coat the majority of your butyrate is actually made in the colon, which is the upper large intestine,
Mm.
and then like 20% of it in the lower small intestine. So you're never going to get it down there from eating butter. So you may get a little systemic things, but it's like it's a crazy long shot. Like you're heaving full court shots in basketball. It's March Madness time. You're just throwing the ball from the other sideline, hoping it goes in. When you could do a lot of other things that are reliably shown in studies to support butyric acid, whether it's actually taking butyric acid products like the one we make, taking a prebiotic fiber, eating vegetables, or some probiotics tend to also help the increase of it.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, that's helpful. Yeah, because I've seen there are some people who have these graphics up and they say, if you want butyrate production, just eat butter. I'm like, not true.
Yeah, I mean that you
Maybe,
don't. That means you don't understand anatomy and digestion, which I understand. It's very complex, but
yeah.
that's just not true.
That's why I have you on. I'm like, I need to talk to Steve about this before before I can confirm or deny anything at all. Yep.
Yeah, I mean, who knows? Maybe there'll be a really really wealthy billionaire or multimillionaire that wants to like do a study where they measure your butyric acids in your blood and after a 1 pound of butter. But I doubt that study is going to get done
Yeah.
to conclusively rule this out. But uh, again, there's the likelihood of that being true is so rare that if those are the types of choices you're making in your health, like you're over optimizing in the wrong area. You should spin
Yeah.
around and look the other way because whatever you're looking for is probably not in that direction.
Yeah. Absolutely. Well, any other final thoughts on gut health and sleep? We've been going just about an hour here that we maybe didn't cover, or just final thoughts to kind of close things off.
I mean, we can definitely go more into sleep later, but I think, like I said, sleep is typically an emergent property of getting sun exposure, of getting,
Hmm.
exercise. Everybody has their own sleep patterns. So like my wife, she can just sleep whenever. She just
My
gets
husband's
knocked
like
out and
that. It
it's
drives me crazy. Like,
yeah, so
why?
yeah, I don't know. I think there's probably phenotypes or types for sleepers. I tend to be more anxious and have some anxiety. So if I don't deal with that throughout the day, it builds up. And then when I close my eyes at night, then I have to deal with it. So there's a lot of behavioral components to sleep. There are chemical components and then just straight up health components.
Yeah.
And so I think focusing on gut, focusing on having having a clean body, or like not a clean body, but like that experience where you lay down, you're not like feeling all kinds of upset tummies or all kinds of weird things. I think that would, Phil, why does Tributyl X have sorbitol? I'm not avoiding your question. It's sorbitol is a natural compound found in all berries and almost all fruits, and you either get a toxic compound to get an enteric capsule, or you use sorbitol. And I chose sorbitol because it's a patent pending enteric capsule, and it's about the equivalent of like 3 berries. So again, if you can't handle that, something's wrong with your gut, not the product.
Yeah.
Anyways, back to sleep here. I would try to take a holistic look of like, hey, did you get sunlight? Did you get exercise? If you're doing carnivore, you're feeling great, but you're having upset tummy when you go down at night, then try shifting your meals around. Try using products like Healthy Gut to actually absorb those. There's ways to do this, but just focusing on taking like a ton of melatonin or a ton of GABA, those should be like for people like Sarah and I, when it's like been a few days of bad sleep and like we have to get some sleep, and then you sort of pull out those big guns.
Yep.
They're obviously better than like, sleeping pill, like prescription sleeping pills.
Definitely. Unfortunately, melatonin never works for me. I hate that. I hate that. It gives me horrible nightmares and I wake up all night, but I don't like melatonin at all. And I don't like people to supplement it that much unless it's, like you said, for a very short-term thing, because it's something your body is supposed to endogenously make. So if you're not endogenously making it, then we need to look at the root cause of that instead of just taking a supplement for it. So yeah, that's my thoughts on that. But yeah, and someone was asking about what we've been talking about. Everything that we've talked about, the Healthy Gut supplements, the Steve's company, is linked in the information section, and there's discount codes that are good through the end of March, I believe. If you guys want to check out the products, there's a really great group that you get to join after you get the products. And then when I kind of was doing research for this, I was actually going through the group and looking through people's questions about their most commonly asked questions about sleep. And the health coaches in the group are great about getting back to people really quickly. So yeah,
that's again, whether it's our products or anybody else's products, the dose matters. And so that includes melatonin, that includes any sort of, I know someone mentioned 5-HTP or tryptophan earlier. Each one of these, the dose matters based on your microbiome, your absorption of that, your gut, as well as your current health status inside your cells. So that's why we have our Facebook group. That's why we have our health coaches on the team, to help everybody with their dosage questions, or just let you know that, hey, this isn't your product and we'd like to give you your money back. And like, you might want to go to this other company or try this other modality, because that's what no one would tell me back in the day. No one told me like, hey, you're using the wrong dose based on the studies.
Yeah.
And no one told me like, hey, this is probably just not working for you. Like, just go in a different direction. And it would have saved me like probably years of my journey.
Yeah, absolutely. That's the thing that, people seem to have a solution for every problem, but, not everything is going to work for everyone. It's important that there's integrity in saying, hey, taking a probiotic, if you've got digestive issues, is usually not the first line of action for people to do. I think probiotics are great and can be helpful, but if you have digestive issues, that is definitely not the first recommendation that I'm going to give to people at all. I'm going to say you need to back up and see about your stomach acid production, make sure structurally things are where they need to be before you worry about, like I said, the people in the house. You need to worry about the structure of your house, right?
Totally.
Yeah.
Totally.
Awesome. Well, there's one more question we can jump in, and then we can kind of call it a talk and get back to it next month. But someone wanted to know what about having a good balance with other short chain fatty acids, not just butyrate? And I'm like, I don't know.
Yeah, no, it's a great question. So the other typical short chain fatty acids are acetate and propanonate. Those are the 3 biggies: butyrate, acetate, and propanonate. The studies on acetate and propanonate are very like mixed, and like some of them, like when they just supplement with those specific short chain fatty acids, like weird stuff happens with mice and rats, and that's typically a bad sign that it's gonna be like very helpful just to supplement with those specific ones. So that's why you don't see anything on the market right now that's just acetate or just propanonate or some of these other like more esoteric short chain fatty acids. The truth is they do all interact. Like some populations of bugs make mostly acetate, and by them making acetate, they feed other bugs that make butyrate. And the same is true for propanonate. So a healthy microbiome does make a orchestra, again, same word again, of sort of short chain fatty acids. So we do want them. And if we are trying to increase our butyric acid populations, the bugs that actually make it, taking other things to increase those bugs is helpful. And I guess I sort of I stumbled there a little bit because we're on the carnivore show, and the number one way to do that is with plants.
Vegetables, yeah.
Yeah. So that is the one sort of crux about this podcast is that
Yeah.
you know, there's plenty of research showing like cranberries and pomegranates and things like this do help with all types of short chain fatty acid production, but those are typically not allowed or encouraged by the carnivore people.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, thanks for answering that question. I was like, I have no idea. Let me get that Steve's opinion on that. Awesome. Well, this has been great. We've had a little bit over an hour. I apologize for my technical difficulties early on, and all of the information is going to be below the healthy gut stuff. And we'll be back next month, probably talk about seasonal allergies. That kind of is on my brain now. So thanks everybody for coming on and watching.
Thanks everyone.
Bye.